Good morning. I'd like to call the Kankakee County Board meeting to order for June 8th, 2021. Today's invocation will be from Carol Weber.
Let's pray together. Dear Lord, bless us as we listen, as we consider, as we decide on our county's topics. Give us patience, give us integrity, generosity to make good decisions. Help us to cooperate and to share for the good results of our county and its residents. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All righty, roll call, please.
Mr. Hess. Present. Mr. Tholen. Mrs. Polk. Mr. Snipes. Present. Mr. Seroy.
Present.
Mr. Lear.
Present.
Mrs. Weber.
Present.
Mrs. Peters.
Present.
Mr. Payton.
Present.
Mrs. Parker.
Present.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Present.
Mr. Fairfield. Mr. Carrico.
Present.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Present.
Mr. Smith from Salina.
Present.
Mr. Swanson. Mr. Featherling.
Present.
Mr. Dunhill.
Present.
Mr. Miller. Mr. Long.
Present.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Present.
Mr. Hunter.
Here.
Ms. Bryan.
Present.
Mr. Collins. Ms. Hudson.
Present.
Mr. Smith from Bourbonnais.
Present.
Mr. Alexander Hildebrand.
Present.
Mr. Wheeler.
Present.
We have a quorum.
We have a quorum. Under public commentary, I have one. It's Mark Ayers. I'll be calling here in a moment.
Hi, this is Mark.
Hello, Mark. This is Andy Wheeler at the Kankakee County Board. You are on public comment.
Hi, Chairman Wheeler. Thank you so much. Good morning, Chairman Wheeler, members of the Kankakee County Board. My name is Mark Ayers, and I'm the Illinois Director for the Humane Society of the United States. And I wanted to take just a minute, or maybe 2 minutes, and just simply thank the entire Kankakee County Board on a major effort that we spearheaded in the Illinois General Assembly to crack down on the commercial sale of puppy mill puppies in pet stores. We have been working for the last 6 years in the Illinois General Assembly at the state level and also at the local level, and trying to combat the commercial sale of dogs and cats that come from these horrendous places, puppy mills and kitten mills, and are then transported into this state to be sold in pet stores in the Chicagoland area. And Kankakee County was a leader in this fight back in 2017 when the entire county adopted an ordinance that simply banned the retail sale of dogs and cats in pet stores, and really was one of the leaders in this fight and helped Illinois become really a major playground for all these cities and counties that came on board passing these two main ordinances. Now there's 21 ordinances in the entire state of Illinois due to Kankakee County being a leader. But ultimately what changed this year in the General Assembly was passage of House Bill 1711. And this was the statewide fix to the problem that we see across the board, again, of these sales of puppies and kittens that come into this state and are sold in these various pet stores throughout the state of Illinois. And Kankakee County, I believe, listed this bill in the county agenda to support in the 2021 legislative session. And I believe that passed unanimously to have the entire county support this measure in the General Assembly. And I can't begin to tell everyone in that room how much that mattered in negotiations as this bill passed through the House and that passed through the Senate. And having the support of Kankakee County really helped get this bill across the finish line. And the fight was intense. There were 7 or 8 contract lobbyists hired to defeat this legislation. And I can't tell you how many times it came up in negotiations that this bill had the support of the entire county of Kankakee. And I believe even the animal control was behind it to help endorse it, and the state attorney was helping to endorse it. And so it was just a major unanimous support from the county. And I can't thank you guys enough for offering your support unanimously on that measure. And that bill passed the Senate 38-12. It passed the House 78-24, and is now on Governor Pritzker's desk for consideration. So simply thank you so much, Chairman Wheeler, and thank you, Kankakee County Board, for endorsing this bill and helping us get it across the finish line.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Have a good day.
Thanks.
Moving on, we have no vacancy appointments today. Proclamations. If we could get this one read into the record, please.
Proclamation of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois, honoring Lyle F. Kaufman for his years of public service to the community. Whereas Lyle Kaufman has served the Limestone Fire Protection District since 1972 and will retire on May 18th, 2021. And whereas Lyle Kaufman has served in the capacities of firefighter, paramedic, and trustee. And whereas Lyle Kaufman has served his community some 43 years, including his time at German Valley and Forest and Fire Districts in Illinois. And whereas his efforts have been instrumental in promoting the need for education, training, and equipment for the safety of all firefighters. And whereas Lyle Kaufman served on the Kankakee County Fire Trustees Association in order that local departments could share ideas and solve local issues. And whereas Lyle Kaufman has served as a representative at the Illinois Association of Fire Protection District, sharing ideas with legislators and solving statewide issues. And whereas Lyle Kaufman has promoted safety in agriculture by being a tireless advocate for grain bin safety, advocating the need for equipment, training, and awareness of dangers. And whereas Lyle Kaufman is known as a storyteller amongst the fire and farming communities, having written articles for several publications. And whereas Lyle Kaufman's leadership has been instrumental bringing the Limestone Fire Protection District into the modern era by providing the district with a new fire station in 2001, new equipment fit for our modern times, training of the highest quality, and responsible budgeting in a troubling time. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the Kankakee County Board acknowledges the dedication and service of Lyle Kaufman to this community and thank him for his many years of public service.
Is there a motion to approve here? Mr. Long, and a second for Ms. Peters. Any other comments from the board? I can just say that when I first became chairman, I remember way back, Mr. Kaufman was one of the first to come in and see me and talk about fire districts. And he took that job very seriously for not just the time I was here, but from obviously years and years before then. So I do thank you for your service, sir. I very much appreciate your partnership in that effort. So. If you could, please join Mr. Long at the microphone back there.
Mm-hmm. You spoke it up. You said her name 3 times.
So I brought this proclamation to the board because I needed to recognize Lyle. You know, we all have those persons in our community that mean a lot to us, the doers, you know, the people who actually get it done. And Lyle is one of those such persons. So I felt important to recognize his 50 years of service, 35 years as a trustee appointed by this board, and the accomplishments that he's had. And I'm going to step aside and let him say a couple of words.
Well, I don't know what to say. Pretty honored that you guys would do this and invite me, give me the proclamation, but second of all, invite me into your place here on this hallowed ground that I could come and see where all the action of the county takes place. I'm more than honored, but I'm more than humbled by the fact that you would recognize my efforts. Honors come with retirement. At some point, you got to decide where and when you want to end this, unless the Lord decides it for you. But I quite honestly have an acronym, AHH. A stands for age, H stands for health, and the last one, and probably the most important one, is hearing. Some of you laugh, but that's a fact. That drives retirement sometimes. And in 1964, when I graduated from college, I came home. My grandpa Frank asked me, who was a fire trustee, won't you join our volunteer fire department? I got to tell you, Grandpa, I'm a newlywed, and I don't know if those two all go together. And he said, I think they will. He was very convincing. And his final words, and I'll never forget this, is that we need you. If Grandpa was here today, he'd probably, I could say the same thing to him, to the next generation and the next generation. We need you. Public service isn't done, in my opinion, to honor people. It's done as your responsibility to your community, period. What comes with that, I'm more than humbled, and I wish you guys could see all the notes and emails and things that I got. The county board has been very supportive in our work. I got to share a little email that I received from Chairman Wheeler, that he said when I told him I was going to retire, he said, and I believe these aren't exactly your words, but would you reconsider, or would you want to reconsider that? We still have time. I think you wrote that to me. I did reconsider, and my answer didn't change. And thank you for that opportunity. I'm greatly appreciative that you felt my efforts were of that. I'm proud of the fire service. Many, many years here, but I got into the service because I wanted to help people. There's some of you that are connected with fire service in the past, and you know what I mean. I've been through everything. And I want to thank my mom. She's not around anymore, but she pushed me to do this too. So between Grandpa and Mom, here I am. And I ideally want to thank the board for this proclamation. It means a lot, and I'll carry it forever. Thank you.
All righty. Moving on, we have certificates of appreciation. One for Mary Boswell, 25 years in the Public Defender's Office, not here today, and Brooke Payne at the Sheriff's Department, 15 years. So we want to thank them for their commitment to the citizens of the county as well. State's Attorney Rowe had something that he wanted to do as well.
Emma, could you come forward a little bit? I'd like to introduce the board to Emma Overton. Emma was an intern in the State's Attorney's Office when I first got started, and I think you were probably the youngest employee, or became the youngest employee probably ever in the office's history. She was 14 with an altered birth certificate. No. So no. No, what were you? I think you were 16?
I was 16.
16. And Emma, you know, there's that saying, you know, when someone leaves the job, everyone's replaceable, but Emma disproves that theory. She has not been replaceable in our office. When she started, she took on a very difficult task of organizing a Shell Oil litigation file that no one else in the office wanted to touch. She not only got that in order, but she really kind of mastered the concepts and the issues at hand in that matter. Ran most of our community outreach stuff, worked as a clerk responsible for helping us maintain the files, and eventually even worked up with administration, trying to keep us in compliance with FOIA and OMA at the outset, helping get minutes, executive session minutes done. So Emma was just really a blessing to the State's Attorney's Office, a blessing to the county. She continued to work with our office up until 3 years ago. Yes. I believe she went to Lake Forest College. She just recently graduated from there an entire year early, of course, because that's how Emma does things. She graduated magna cum laude with a Bachelor of Arts in Politics and Environmental Studies, a minor in Legal Studies, Dean's List every semester. And you would have got 8 semesters, except you graduated early. National Honor Society for Political Science and Leadership, and she's now going to on to the University of Illinois Law School in the fall. And what type of law you want to do?
Hoping environmental law.
Okay, very good. Kind of goes in line with the shell case. Yeah. So we're really thankful for everything you invested in Kankakee County, and we're really happy for you on your accomplishments going forward. And Mr. Snipes called me and reminded me about this, so I called Andy. He got it on the agenda real quick, and I know Mr. Snipes, you wanted to say something as well.
Just want to echo those same sentiments. Such an amazing youth. I've known her before she was born, after she was born. She's followed me through every one of my concerts when I had a voice, and then after. And I just think that, when she decided she wanted to come into the county, went into Jim's office and decided law was where she wanted to be. And then opening up that door of opportunity for our youth. And I just think the sky is the limit. I see the environmental law and maybe environmental judge, or whether you're born from this area, the sky is just the limit, but an incredible individual. And I just thought to the county board, as well as Jim and others, need to see that youth role model that they kind of birthed way back at 14, and now looking at what you do. Keep doing what you do. Definitely you will have our well wishes or whatever, and we look forward to great things coming from you. And I do have the gift. I missed the graduation, but I did.
Thank you so much. Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
She do have to go because her mother got a kidney stone, so I told her I just needed her for a few minutes.
Robert.
Excuse me, are you guys taking public comment today?
We've already done that.
Well, normally you would ask if there's anybody in the public who wants to make a public comment. I've seen every committee meeting where you guys have done that, you can do that today.
We have already had public comment.
But you didn't ask anybody in the room whether they were here to speak publicly, and I'm here to speak publicly. This is
I think you can suspend.
You might. Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Mr. Snipes, second. Ms. Peters, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear. Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith from Salina.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Donnell.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Ms. Bryan.
Aye.
Mr. Collins.
Aye.
Ms. Hudson.
Aye.
Mr. Smith from Bourbonnais.
Aye.
Mr. Alexander.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Nay. Motion carries. You have, does anyone have any accounting of what the other public comment was? 5 minutes? You have 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate that. Good morning, everybody. My name is Marta Perales, and I'm a resident of Moments. I have been down here for about almost 10 years. I am here because I am concerned about the redistricting committee process. I've been watching it, and I was at the last committee hearing. I think not the last one, the second to last one. And I was a bit critical of the process itself, the lack of public participation, among a few other things. I know you, at the last meeting that I was at, you guys voted against the public, or the county purchasing $13,000 for software for the public to make, draw their own maps. That was rejected by the committee, the redistricting committee. What I wanted to come here and say is, I was actually honored to hear some of the words from the people that have been here a long time. This is a sacred ground. You guys are public servants. So when I see the lack of public participation, when I see the lack of transparency, I feel that it's my job to speak out. It's the democratic way in our countries. It is democracy. This is a government of the people, by the people. So yes, I do feel that, when you have a public comment period, people should be allowed to speak and not just sort of muffled over. I just wanted to say, I wanted this on record, that the county actually took 2 months to create those maps. Unfortunately, the public itself was only given 5 days to submit a map. Between a Monday and Friday, the link for the base maps was put up on a Monday saying you have 5 days to submit this map. So the reason why I was concerned, because a member of the public did submit a map. And it was not a perfect map by any means, from my understanding, at least from what I heard from the conversations here. But what I was concerned about was the way this member of the public was sort of chastised by a few members of the redistricting committee. That shouldn't be. No one's perfect. You guys spent 2 months creating those maps, tweaking those maps with professional help. So when a member of the public submits a map, I don't think they should be chastised. That's all I need to say. Thank you. Have a good day.
I would like to, before we move on, I just wanted to introduce somebody to the group. You may remember that during the COVID discussions that we had the ability to use some COVID money on communicating with the public and with other municipalities, internally, externally, department heads, on all of our programs, and we got the head nod to use some of that money for a communications director, and we extended an offer. And has been accepted. So I wanted to introduce the former, I guess, communications manager for the city of Kankakee, now the director of communications for the county, Jasmine Humble. She's sitting in the back. Say welcome aboard. She will be joining us here about a week or so, I believe, a little over a week. So you know, you have plenty of time to meet her, and we'll talk a lot about her extensive skill set and abilities. You know, while we go through this process, we're talking about a website just for the COVID money to show the public exactly what we're doing, to be a house for all of the video, things like that from the meetings that we're going to be having. This group is going to be a busy group of people over the next year plus. And so once we get into that structure, you'll understand more of what I'm talking about. But you can be as heavily or involved or not as engaged as you want to be, but everyone on the board will have a subcommittee to be on, and we hope you contribute in that manner. There will also be members of the public on those. So Jasmine will coordinate much of that communications, because I'm sure if you're on one committee, you're going to want to know what everybody else is doing. You're going to want to know what's going on in Bradley and Bourbonnais and Aroma Park and what everybody else is doing, hopefully to build some cohesion in the community so we don't waste money. We put our best foot forward on things that we all agree between county, school districts, and municipalities. So welcome aboard. I look forward to it. Thank you. Mr. Hunter, did you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You just mentioned that all of us will be on various committees, and you intimated, not intimated, but you did indicate that the community will be involved as well too. Can you speak to your partial involvement with community-based organizations and the underserved organizations that you have articulated and met with thus far?
Could we do that at the end? I had this blocked out under, like, I think it was new business or other business.
That's fine.
Let's get into it a little bit then. But we've got some business we got to work through, but I definitely will.
I just want to make sure that's on the record.
We started in diverse communities with the conversation to make sure that everybody knew that we were communicating properly on the front end.
On St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, on St. Patrick's Day. Once we knew this, now that we've got the rules, and there's a lot more rules than when this started, we'll get into some of that. And actually, we'll get into all of that on an in-depth level in the subcommittee meeting. So give me some time to the end of the meeting, and then we'll talk about that. So moving on, the minutes of the last meeting, May 11th, there's our motion to approve. Ms. Parker, second, Mr. Eckhoff. All those in favor say aye. Aye. On Zoom?
Aye.
Those were all affirmatives on Zoom. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on, claims reports, please.
The Committee on County Claims would beg leave to report they have examined the following claims presented and recommend payment. The clerk is hereby authorized and directed to issue orders to the several claimants. Total monthly claims, $5,530,360.24.
All righty, is there a motion on this? Mr. Lear, second. Mr. Long, any questions? claims report as prepared by the Finance Department, since it doesn't come from another department anymore. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith from Salina.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Donnell.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Ms. Bryan.
Aye.
Mr. Collins.
Aye.
Ms. Hudson.
Aye.
Mr. Smith from Bourbonnais.
Aye.
Mr. Alexander.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Under department reports, please.
County Finance Department Claims Committee report from April 1st through the month of April 2021.
Sorry,
Sorry.
it was her.
Total dispersed, $5,530,360.24. County Collector's monthly report for April 2021. Total cash and bank and investments, $783,144.57. County Treasurer's monthly report for April 2021. Total cash and investments, $783,144.57. Coroner's monthly report for April 2021. Total calls, 119, 18 coroner's cases, 4 autopsies, 6 toxicology, 60 hospice, 43 referrals, 61 cremations, 3 pending. Income summary report for the coroner for April 2021, total of $2,876. Circuit clerk cash book, month ending April 2021, total dispersed $448,160.71. Recorder's monthly report for April 2021, disbursement fees paid to the treasurer, $158,331.95. County clerk monthly report for April 2021, total $33,374.81. Animal control monthly report for April 2021, total funds submitted to the county treasurer, $35,154.12. In the IPTIP building fund, $8.77. Total animals handled, 125. Monthly building division report for April 2021, total permits 98, total fees of $24,169. Monthly resolution list for June 2021, total to the county of $714.
All righty. Is there a motion to combine and approve? On department reports, Mr. Hunter, second. Mr. Kirkstra? I believe that's a voice vote. I don't have that list here in front of me. Yeah, it's a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Under consent agenda, is there anything that needs to be removed? Anything second time, anything that needs to be removed? Is there a motion to combine and approve? We'll go with Mr. Kinzinger, second, Mr. Smith?
Smith.
That would be Mr. Smith from Salina. Not Mr. Smith from Bourbonnais. Yes. If there's no questions, roll call vote, please.
You want me to read them into the record?
Oh, yeah, that would help.
Okay.
Make it legal, please.
The reappointment of Timothy J. Wilhelm to the Kankakee River Valley Forest Preserve District. The reappointment of Robert Sherman to the Moments Pembroke Union Drainage District Number 1. The reappointment of Douglas Gray to the Kankakee County Farmland Assessment Review Committee. The appointment of Scott Grice to the Mantino Bourbonnais Union Drainage District Number 6. The appointment of Jordan Lee to the Greater Moments Fire Protection District.
All righty, we had a motion and a second on that. Thank you.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith from Salina.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Donnell.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
Yes.
Ms. Bryan.
Aye.
Mr. Collins.
Aye.
Ms. Hudson.
Aye.
Mr. Smith from Bourbonnais.
Aye.
Mr. Alexander.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. The next item under Executive Committee, if we can get the title read in the record, please.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois regarding the renewal of franchise agreement with Comcast of Illinois, VI LLC, and Comcast of California, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan LLC.
Alrighty, is there a motion to approve on the floor on this? Start with Ms. Weber. Mr. Hunter, was that a second?
No, I'll second. I have a question. Who?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'll second that, Your Honor. Who is our main contact person?
I want to say her last name is Page. I believe it's Kalisha Page.
Okay, Kelly, can you get that information to me in terms of who that contact person is?
Yeah, I've got it.
Okay,
Yeah, it's not a
thank
problem.
you.
Yeah, so I was working on this with SAO office.
Okay.
So, for sure. Write that down here so I don't forget. Ms. Weber, yes.
I pose that question because in my former life, the contact persons from the various franchises really practice community benefits. So oftentimes we receive premiums and so forth, which we disseminate to a lot of the students in our schools. So that's why I wanted the name.
Oh, okay. Is that Johan?
Yes,
Fernando?
Fernando. Johan
Yeah, okay,
Fernando.
I remember
yeah.
him.
Now, he's a big shot, really big shot now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Ms. Weber. Sorry.
I would think that this agreement says they'll provide services to our county. Is that what the agreement?
Right, within their service area. Yeah, that's it. Basically, it's just an extension of the current agreement. And then I had them add on other county facilities that weren't receiving the gratis cable service for basic cable that we were allowed as being the recipient of this contract. Yeah. So we get a franchise fee, and then our buildings get one line, each building.
So my question is there a way that areas not served by Comcast could get service at all through this agreement?
Yeah, there is, and that's part of the broadband initiative. Right now, it's up to, and believe me, I haven't broached this directly with Comcast, but it's like this with most utilities. The public doesn't pay for the infrastructure. That was the House bill and the Senate bill to get gas to Hopkins Park was so that there could be a surcharge because they couldn't pay for their own infrastructure in the village level. And it's the same thing with Comcast. I believe they charge for infrastructure on the village level. So they'd have to run the lines out there and know that they would have the business. But I could ask the question and get a firm answer for you, but that's my understanding of how that works.
Because in the past, we've talked, you and I, about there are definite areas in all parts of the county not served by Comcast.
Yeah, we have, I think we're 70-some% of the county has some type of high-speed internet, but the ones who don't have it feel it on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
So, Mr. Kinzinger?
Couldn't this be addressed more formally with the funds that we're receiving for COVID-19?
Well, to be honest, the state got exponentially more money for broadband in rural areas. So I'm leaning on them first and us to pick up any local match is kind of the way I was approaching that to start with. We shouldn't spend all of our COVID money on broadband for the county when we should only have to pay a local match, if even that. So I've just started pushing in that direction, focused on Hopkins Park, but also leaving the rest of the communities, Altorf, everything out towards Essex that doesn't have internet, all the rural stuff. So it's part of a broader conversation. I just don't know what that price tag is yet. Mr. Snipes?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate some of the services of Comcast, especially to the individuals who are in the poor and dispossessed arena. But I do have a major concern with this broadband fee that's been placed upon the people for the free service, I guess, they provide. It started out at $5, now it's at $15. And so when you have that conversation with this individual, we need to look at how far is this fee. This is a fee in addition to the fee of you paying for your service. You're giving you're paying for the free service of others, and that fee is constantly going up from $5 and now at $15. Where does it stop? So I would like to know as to that broadband fee that's being added, is that something that's permanent or eventually will degrade and go away on the bill because it has went 300% since it first started. Thank you.
Any other thoughts on this agreement? There's two contracts because we have to do it. They have two different LLCs in Illinois. That's why there's two contracts. So they basically, well, they do say the same thing. It's just two different entities. So we had a motion in a second. I apologize. We're ready. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith from Salina.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Donnell.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Ms. Bryan.
Aye.
Mr. Collins.
Aye.
Ms. Hudson.
Aye.
Mr. Smith from Bourbonnais.
Aye.
Mr. Alexander.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Moving on. Concurring resolution 256. I don't know if there's a title.
Not really.
If we could just get the top part read in the record, please. I'm sorry.
This part?
Yeah. Or the amount. Yeah.
Okay. Contract for Gallagher Asphalt for section 21-00000-00 GM, non-motor fuel tax county in the amount of $869,339.85.
Is there a motion on that? Mr. Carrico, second. Mr. Kinzinger, any question? Yes, Mr. Eckhoff.
Is this just a...
Go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is this just a general fund, or is it for a specific road?
Because
I didn't see it
that's on
anywhere.
a certain section.
Okay.
Yeah, that's on a certain, it's non-MFT. So yeah, that's
we
county
know-
highway funds.
Okay, do we know which section in the county?
By that section, yes, it was on the committee.
Okay.
Sorry, we had it on the committee level. This is
No,
just
that's fine.
authorizing
That's fine.
paying
I'm
of the
just
bill.
checking.
Mark, do you remember which section this is, please? I forgot Mark is here. He never misses this. He's been waiting for this for years for someone to ask a question.
This is our summer general maintenance. So there's several areas we're going to do. Warner Bridge Road from Warner Bridge North to 9000. We're doing Division Street in Mantino, and we're doing X Line Road and Armour Road.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. I guess we're ready for roll call? Roll call vote.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith from Salina.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Donnell.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Ms. Bryan.
Aye.
Mr. Collins.
Aye.
Ms. Hudson.
Aye.
Mr. Smith from Bourbonnais.
Aye.
Mr. Alexander.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. So moving on to PZA. If we can get the title read in the record, and then Delbert may have something for us.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois regarding ZBA case 21-02, rezoning from A1 Agriculture District to Rural Estate District in Section 10 of Mantino Township.
Is there a motion on this? Mr. Featherling, to approve, a second? You're, I'm sorry?
I'm looking at Kelly.
Oh, okay, a second, I'm sorry. You second that, Ms. Bryan? Okay, you're on the screen. Go ahead, Del.
All right, this is a this is a request from applicant Corey Martin, who would like to, he's under contract to purchase this 5-acre tract. It's located on the north side of 10,000 Road in Mantino Township, just north of the lake. You can see the lake on the bottom of the screen there. He'd like to purchase the property and build a single-family home for himself and his family to move into. It's zoned currently A1 agriculture, and he'd like it to be zoned to rural estate to allow the home to be built there. The two parcels to the left are already zoned rural estate, so it is it is within the area there. Zoning board voted 4-0 to approve the rezoning, and Planning and Zoning Committee concurred.
Any questions for Delbert on this? Comments? Mr. Kinzinger.
It's due to my own lack of study, but does the remaining agricultural property have access?
Del, did you hear that? Does the remaining property have access?
Property to the north.
This property's been divided off for quite some time. Was never rezoned for residential purposes, but yes, that's the agricultural property there to the north is a much larger piece of property, and it has access to the road in 2 locations, both the 10,000 Road and then I think it's Maple Street.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Let's go ahead and do roll call, please.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico. Mr. Eckhoff. Mr. Smith from Salina. Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Donnell.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Ms. Bryan.
Aye.
Mr. Collins.
Aye.
Ms. Hudson.
Aye.
Mr. Smith from Bourbonnais.
Aye.
Mr. Alexander.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Now moving on, redistricting. While Delbert comes up here, you know, this was a pretty drawn out process. I guess, you know, let's start out with, can I get a motion to get something on the floor? Mr. Hess.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I make a motion, I just want to take the time to thank the redistricting committee and to let everybody know that the redistricting committee comprised of all 3 parties that are affected by the county. We had Mr. Rowe's input along with his staff, Dell. I mean, we covered this very, very good, I believe. And I would make the motion that we accept map E.
Is there a second on that? Let me go with Mr. Payton on a second. Now we could, we'll open it for discussion. I just wanted to make a couple of comments about the process because unlike what you may hear or have been told, I don't know of anybody else that has done it in a more open process. We had a legal training that was, you know, second to none. Because I don't think there was any other legal training, so I guess it was second and no, I'm sorry, that was a shot. But,
I'll take it.
No, it was very thorough. It was very thorough, and we had a lot of questions, and you know, we went through and we understood what our mission was and the guide rails that we had to stay within. We also realized that we have many more guide rails than the state of Illinois has. The state of Illinois was the way they do their process. They don't have nearly the legal requirements that we do on the local level, which is odd, but telling, I guess. So, you know, that was part of it. We had public input, and in most meetings, we had 2 public comments. We had people calling us, you know, and we had public comment at the meetings about how many board members we should have and comments about the maps. And it was about as open as I've seen anything anywhere in the state of Illinois in terms of mapping. You know, there were 5 maps that we started with. The public could draw the maps. They actually went out on Friday. They didn't go out on Monday, as was alleged. They were out Friday, so you had almost, you know, at least 8 days, if not, you know, longer to work on these because people knew we were going to do it this way. You know, we broadcasted the meetings live where they were recorded so people could go back. We did get one map that was not a legal map. There was no way to change that map to make it legal. You know, I don't think we disparaged anybody in that process. It was just not a viable map. I think there were 6 total maps, 1 from the public, and all we have to do now is to pick one map to move forward. Now, the other thing to consider is that I think literally the 12th hour on the Monday, the last night of the legislative session, they passed an elections bill that basically said we're going to push the deadline for having maps drawn for county boards until the end of the year. I believe it has to be approved in the December board meeting. It's way down the road. It's like November is one deadline, but by the 31st of December, you have to have it approved. And they said you can use other data, like this American Cities data, and Delbert's going to show you a little bit about this, that some people have already been using to try to draw districts. So we've actually tried to do that to see how that would impact our map process. Dell's going to run through a little bit about that, but the governor hasn't signed that bill yet, just so you know. So we're still under the end of this month approval to get it to the full board process for next month. So the current law says it has to be done by the first meeting in July. So this is our opportunity to approve a map with, as you will see, the best data that we're going to get our hands on is already here, and that's our last census. Until, if the census comes out in September, like they say it is, which we don't know that yet, our computer system will automatically upload the census data, and then we can revisit if those deviations between districts are off.
If the governor signs that.
If the governor signs it, exactly.
Second to none right here.
Touche. So yeah, we fully expect him obviously to sign it. He signed the other maps within days of that non-transparent, non-public process that the legislator undertook of drawing their highly gerrymandered maps that have eliminated a lot of possibilities for representation from Kankakee County residents in Springfield on either party. So I'll just mention that. So if we're comparing apples to apples, we've done leaps and bounds better than other people have done here on a process side of things. And so I'd be happy to show you some of the maps, and Dell, he's got the computer up there to kind of get them ready.
Share my screen.
So probably the best thing I would do is we'll show you map C and we'll show you E. Okay, but let's start with E. If anybody wants to see the other one, we can. But yeah, put E up there first, and we'll just show them the map that's in front of them right now for approval. And we could revisit the other if this one fails. Let's go that route. That's probably best. So that is the current map that we have drawn. The straight lines, the non-gerrymandered districts. If you remember, what were the rules? I hope everybody got a chance to watch those meetings. The first thing is population has to be balanced, and we're within, I believe, plus or minus 2% in every district, which means it's either 2% more than the average or minus 2%, and much of it is much tighter. So we have nice, clean, straight lines. And it tends to manifest within the cities as well. Becomes much more difficult in the cities, as everybody knows, because once you click one block, that could have an apartment complex on it, like a 6-unit, and then all of a sudden you're off by 5% in the whole district. So it's not as easy as it may sound to say, why does Bradley have 6 board reps? Well, because the law says it has to. Because it's either going to be this way or it's going to be this way. It can't be this way, because unlike the state of Illinois, we have gerrymandering laws. So I just want to mention that you can see those are about as compact as they come, and really that's all we did in this process is cleaned up the map and made it more compact and tried to divide things up in a more fair manner. So I don't know if there's any other comments from the redistricting committee first, but that might be better to get their comment on just this map. And then we could talk about this. What is American
Community Survey?
American Community Survey. It's a division of the U.S. Census.
It's a product of the Census Bureau.
Okay, all right. And so the last one is a 5-year estimate. So
right, 2019 is our latest date you can get.
Latest date. I tell you what. Can we show them what that looks like?
Yeah. While we've got this map up, because this has actual blocks on it, I was going.
Oh, sure.
Let me show you that. The problem with, can everyone hear me? Because that microphone's a little ways away. Let's go to Target District 22. Since we're in here, Target District 22. Say we wanted to add a territory to 22, we would come over here and we would click on it. You see that little red area there? That is a block in the census data. 2010 census data, that's a block. I can bring that in, I could click this one. I'm not going to do it, but if I go over here and click this button, it'll add it to 22 and recalculate the population and the percentages for 22 and 25. See how small that geography is. You can get very precise. You can you can get down to a lot of detail. Now I'm going to close this and not save any of that. I'm going to bring up the map we created using the American Community Survey data, which is only at block group level. That is the smallest geography that data comes in. This is the same map interpolated out, so the districts are roughly in the same area, but it's stretching it to block group, not that lower level block data. Just for comparison purposes, block group data is in many instances, actually that's not a good one to choose, let's choose number 7 here, can be as large as an entire township, like Salina. Salina is a block group, Essex is a block group, Norton Township is a block group. Those 3 combine to be a census tract. So if I want to add territory to number 7 here, I either have to take the entire township or none of the township. That really throws off your population and your percentages. As you can see here, we've got percentages of 31%, negative 53%, negative 36%. So the data that we can get, and I believe they say we can use, is not at a low enough detailed level to really do us a lot of good.
I hope that makes sense. We would love to use any other tool, and so we looked at it. There's no way with the constraints that we have to compactness, non-gerrymandered. The equalized population alone makes it impossible to use this tool. So that's one of the other reasons I was bringing forward to say, even though we have more time, I think we need to approve a map, and then when new census data comes out, we can take a look and see what that does to the map. And if the percentages go wacky, like to 10, 15%, then we need to do something about it. And I think, I'm not gonna put words in Mr. Rowe's mouth, but I think you would agree. We need to change something if that happens. And we would know in September, and then we have basically about a month to go through that process at that point. So as soon as census data hits, we're going to revisit this with staff and take a look at that, and we'll report on to the board on it. What has that done to the numbers? So, and it could manifest in different parts of the county where there's been population gain or loss. Mr. Hunter first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you speak to the new housing permits in the past 5 years? Or let me be more micro. In the past year, do you have that data, which may impact the standard deviation?
We have that data. The problem is that's only one
variable
portion, one variable, and I would be hesitant to use that because of that fact. It doesn't take into consideration demolished houses, abandoned houses. It doesn't take into consideration any migration patterns.
Well, in terms of migration, I understand your comments, but can you generally indicate to the body what has been in your estimation, the growth based upon the data and the information which you have at your disposal?
That data would only show us where new houses have been built.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, I wouldn't necessarily call that growth.
Yeah.
Because you have to take all of those variables into consideration for
and that has been where?
Mostly in the northern metro area.
Mantino-ish area?
Actually, Bradley, Bourbonnais.
Okay.
More in that area. A little bit in Mantino.
Yeah.
A little bit in Hopkins Park too.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, we talked about that, and the houses being built since 2010 is an indicator. But did they come from out of the area? Did they move from one side of say Kankakee to Bourbonnais? Right. Did the kids go off to college and not come home? Right. Where's the renters at? That kind of stuff is just totally unknown.
Yeah, and you spoke to Hopkins Park, Pembroke Township, which is 52 square miles out there. Does that indicate, and from my own perception and from information I've heard from the people who live out there, is that the Hispanic growth out there? I see the vice chair saying yes. I hear there's a hell of a influx of Hispanic residents.
Our new housing data does not show that, but I can tell you from working in the building department and the questions we get and the clients that come in, that yes, there seems to be.
Thank you. Thank you.
Seems to be.
Mr. Lear?
One other variable that came to my mind, persons per household would not be part of the information you have.
No, it wouldn't.
Is that correct?
That is correct. So even
that'd
though
be a
we may
major
know
variable.
how many houses were built, we do not know how many people are living in each house.
Does the county get demo permits, or does the municipalities issue their own?
We do, but the information we got so we could get it county-wide, we took from the assessment record.
I see. Okay.
So that doesn't include demolitions.
Mr. Snipes.
Thank you. I would be interested into, I guess, every county board member receiving just a tentative map of their respective district and how this, those lines would, if we approve whatever section today, get a tentative map to see what that would look like. And the reason I say tentative is because there's a variable out there, given that the census data, when it becomes concrete, would probably be a part of it. But I would be interested into that to see where those boundaries would be modified, whether slightly or if there is an impact in certain areas or whatever. So my request is just to receive a kind of a tentative map of how, with incorporating these numbers, where your boundaries will be on streets, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. Mr. Hess?
Yes, thank you, again, Chairman. The reason the committee selected these two maps, and the reason I select E more than anything else, is if, Del, could you go back to E up there on the screen, please? Okay, if you look at the lines, if we have to make adjustments on this map, this would be the easiest map, I believe, to make adjustments on. And I had a question this morning for Dan, which he answered in District 2 going up there. We talked about splitting Sumner Township, but he explained to me this morning that that is the exact boundary of the Manteno Fire Protection District and the Grant Park Fire Protection District, so that's already split for them. So, and this is, I think we made one little change, correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, on the one little portion of...
There's a small portion of Aroma Township that was in a different county board district that had just a small number of voters in there that would have created a potential issue. But I believe that's been resolved.
So, yeah, we took care of that. It was around Baker Creek. It was right over there.
If you look at these maps, you know, I think this is the easiest one. If we have to make a change, this would be the one.
Okay, Ms. Peters?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and appreciate all the work the committee did. I know that there was a lot of moving targets that they had to look at. So I do oppose E. I'm not sure what fire protection districts the line has to do, because I'm looking at my new district, which I would now be in District 5 possibly, that it would probably cross into 4 or 5 different fire protection districts. My home is in the village of Manteno, and I also would represent people all the way down to Aroma Park. So I would like to see C thought of as an option, because it's a more compact map as far as populations and me knowing my neighbors versus me knowing my neighbors and then not representing most of them and representing people from Aroma Park and that whole rural area. So I think District 5 on map E leaves a lot to be desired.
Is there anyone else? Any members of the committee? On Zoom, okay. Yeah, so basically we have a motion on the floor to accept E. I think we've gone through all the other details. Any other questions for Del? I guess we'll be ready for a roll call vote then, to approve E.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Nay.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith from Salina.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Dunhill.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter. Ms. Bryan.
Aye.
Mr. Collins.
Aye.
Ms. Hudson.
Aye.
Mr. Smith from Bourbonnais.
Aye.
Mr. Alexander.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Motion carries, and I really appreciate all your work on the committee level. You know, all the public comment that you took and the phone calls that came in. I can tell you from my personal experience, it was about over 90% that were in favor of the choices that were made. So those were direct comments from public comment and the calls to us personally. So thank you for that and the time. Announcing some openings. Mr. Hendrickson?
One opening on the Raymond Drainage District, one opening on the Spring Creek Drainage District, one opening on the Canavan Drainage District, one opening on the Gar Creek Drainage District, one opening on the Little Beaver Special Drainage District, one opening on the McGilvray Special Drainage District, one opening on the Minnie Creek Drainage District, one opening on the Momence Yellowhead Drainage District number 1, one opening on the Essex Township Fire Protection District, one opening on the Zoning Board of Appeals, one opening on the Kankakee County Board of Health for a board member, one opening on the Kankakee County Convention and Visitors Bureau, one opening on the University of Illinois Extension, one opening on the Kankakee Township Fire Protection District, 2 openings on the Kankakee County Board of Health for medical doctors, 3 openings on the Mantino number 9 Drainage District, 6 openings on the Kankakee County Regional Planning Commission.
All right, just to mention that we will need somebody new for the Convention and Visitors Bureau. Our representative was Dave Barron. He's now an alderman in the city of Kankakee, so we will be having somebody new for the county to represent ourselves on that, or represent the county on that board. Yes, Mr. Featherling.
Our zoning board of appeals opening that's up, is that, what particular area are we trying to represent in that district? And that,
I think it
we got
was
it scattered all over, but I didn't know if Del had a chance to tell us, let everybody know what area that is.
Del, which ones are open? We can't have 2 from the same township, I believe, correct?
Correct.
So which ones are open? That's a tough one off the top of our head. He's thinking.
6 members. We have a member from Mantino. We have a member from Sumner.
Kankakee.
1 from Kankakee. That's 3. 1 from Pilot. That's why that actually, that might be Limestone. I'd have to check on that. 1 from St. Anne. And where's the 6th one from? Or was that 6?
The gentleman that retired was from
Rockville.
Rockville.
Okay.
So it's any of the others.
Certainly
It's Rockville and any of the others.
Okay. Yellowhead, Pembroke, Momence, Essex, Salina, for sure, Otto.
And there's applications online if you
Yep,
want.
applications on the website for all of
I
these
want to let everybody
positions.
know that if you're in that area and you want to get involved and help out, there's a seat there for you.
Yep.
Thank you.
All righty, moving on. Steve McCarty is on. Let's see here. Moving on to new business. If we could get the title read in the record, please.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois regarding the creation of the fiscal year 2021 fund budget, fund number 098, American Rescue Plan Fund, lost revenue and budget amendment.
Is there a motion on this first to create these funds? Mr. Kinzinger, second. We'll go with Ms. Bryan. Steve, I don't know if you want to give the explanation, or if you prefer I do, or Nita.
Yeah, I can give a short explanation if you want.
Please, thank you.
Yeah, in looking and reading, as the information becomes more available and clear on these ARPA funds, we felt it was prudent to add another fund to help account for and keep track of the various things that these funds can be used for, and one of them is lost revenue. There's a specific calculation that we were able to use that provides us a 4.1% growth per year, and then we can compare our actual against that 4.1% calculation. And the way that the county board can use the funds, so we have the ARPA fund, and then we have a lost revenue fund, and then we have our other normal general fund, special revenue funds. The Department of Treasury identified, very specifically on the ARPA funds, and I know there's a number of subcommittees and things that'll be taking care of that. And then it gives a little bit more latitude to the county board for the lost revenue piece. And so to keep everything clean, we thought we would create this fund as well as the ARPA fund to show how things were transacted according to the areas. So we believe it'll be the cleanest way to do it. If the Fed send auditors in 5 years to look over our shoulder and say, okay, explain what you did, I believe this will be a very clean way to do it. So that's what we're recommending to do.
All right, is there any other questions, any questions for Steve on this? It's basically a way to segregate the funds from everything else, because they can only be used for different things. As I mentioned before, when this started, there weren't many strings. Now there's strings all over the place. So it's much more restricted than people think as far as what you can spend, even the lost revenue money on. We thought that was going to be just like we could do with it what we thought best. That's not necessarily the case. So, and that's why I've been sending those updates and those FAQs to everybody, so you can kind of keep up with this as it evolves. More and more becomes clear, and while it is a windfall, if you will, it's in specific areas that don't let us address some things that we wanted to address. So we'll go through that through a longer process. So we have a motion and a second. I just want to make sure. Is there any other questions, thoughts on this? Since it is budget, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith from Salina.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Donnell. Mr. Donnell?
He's not there.
All right.
On screen.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Okay. Ms. Bryan.
Aye.
Mr. Collins.
Aye.
Ms. Hudson.
Aye.
Mr. Smith from Bourbonnais.
Aye.
Mr. Alexander.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Right before we go into executive session, in case some people aren't coming back, I wanted to make sure that the crowd knew a couple things, if you will. In-person meetings will start next week. That's phase 5. So all of our processes come into play where if somebody is not here, the board or the subcommittee or the committee has to vote to let them in via Zoom. They need to communicate that ahead of time to the committee, and it has to be for those specific reasons that we talked about. There's no more, I just want to be home. So that's those types of things. Obviously, family, business pulls you away. We want to be, in an age of technology, we will work with you, but it's time to come back in the room. And so I just wanted to mention that to everybody. Is there any questions about that?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I got a question. You're going to let people in here who have not been vaccinated?
We assume that everybody's been vaccinated.
Well, that's an assumption.
Well, we have to follow the CDC guidelines, and so we cannot ask people if they've been vaccinated. So we must assume.
I don't know about that. I'd refer that to council, but I just heard some information about a dear friend of mine who's got COVID, and I've been at meetings with him, and man, and I don't, I'm too damn old to be subject to that stuff, but I'm just hoping that we'll get some kind of definitive explanation or response on my question. I mean, we're adults and we have to be pragmatic in terms of our colleagues and safe.
Yeah, and I would hope that the people in this room were having that in their mind when they're thinking of the people they're sitting with in the room.
You would hope.
Yeah.
But I'm going to push you to the mat on that, Mr. Chairman. You know, I would request that there's be some kind of solicitation of the numbers of the people who have been inoculated.
We're not allowed to do that. It's against the law.
Well, anyway, let me ask you.
Yeah.
I just need to know who has not been inoculated, and I won't interface with them.
That's up to you to ask that question individually. We cannot ask that question as a governmental body. I don't like wearing orange.
Based on what? Give me the empirical.
It's called HIPAA.
law.
It's HIPAA. We cannot force people to divulge any medical information to us.
Okay.
And nor we can from the public. So if somebody is not feeling safe, they have the option to wear a mask. I have the option to wear a mask if I'm vaccinated and I don't feel safe even being vaccinated.
Yeah, I've been vaccinated and I got my mask here too. So.
Believe me, I'm not disparaging on that fact. But we have to think about the entire body, and with the governor and the CDC being on the same page, and as of the 11th, we're open, that's the rules. And so obviously, if you know, protect yourselves, we're saying that, but we just can't ask the question. And Anita's done the work on this, and I don't know if she has comment, but I think I got the thumbs up that I explained something right for once. We'll go from there. Yes, Mr. Sarai.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if somebody's not going to participate in person, should they reach out to that committee's chairman or vice chairman to see if they can get access to the Zoom? Is that the process? Who do you want the person to reach out to?
I think they should get a hold of, and I'm glad you brought that up. It would be send an email to the chairperson and to Kelly.
Okay.
So she's logged it. Because we need to know a couple days ahead of time, because we obviously have to, you know, maybe we have a standing agenda item that allows us to vote on people for remote. You know, I would say that, you know, it's got to be a good reason. You know, so it can't just because, you know, I don't feel like coming in.
Well,
now,
or
you know,
to Mr. Hunter's point, if he doesn't feel safe, I would think that would be a good enough reason. If somebody doesn't feel safe to come in the room, that should be a good enough
absolutely not correct, but if that's up to the committee to decide if they want to vote that way.
Just another follow-up.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And maybe I'll pose this to council. Let's say, for example, somebody is incapacitated. Could that possibly fall under reasonable accommodation of Section 504 of the Rehab Act?
No, we have voted.
No. Do you know what that, Mr. Chairman? All due respect, do you know what that
You're
is?
not employees of the county. It only applies to employees.
Well, would that be an accommodation, though?
Mr. Chairman?
We have accommodated by vote.
Okay.
So when people have been away for surgeries and rehab, we have accommodated them by a vote. We just voted, hey, for the entire period of your recuperation, you know, there was a member here in the room, I won't bring up who, but we voted to let them until they, two members, yeah.
Yeah, and all I'm saying is that considered an accommodation?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's my bottom line.
We're not required legally to, because we're not employees of the county, per se. Sorry. But that's true. We're technically not employees of the county. We're elected officials. So, and that even goes for the elected department heads. They're not technically employees of the county.
I'm out of here.
You're out.
I'm done.
Per se.
It will.
You know, per se.
Yeah, it is. We're part of the public, though, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Protect yourself and protect those you love. That's all I can tell you, man. Dude, and we're not going to stop you from wearing a mask or whatever else. That's not it. But it's time to come back in the room. If we're open as a state and as a city, as a county, then the boardroom's open too. Just think about the person next to you. That's all I ask. Beyond that, I just wanted to mention also that these appropriations were reappropriated for Kankakee County. Not a lot of people know this, so I'll mention it. $7 million for the Kankakee River is now coming to the county.
Yes.
So I'll say that again. $7 million is coming to the county. Senator Joyce got that appropriation. Thank you for that. So we had a conversation with the senator, more to come on that, but we're gonna segregate those funds into a special fund that I can't even look at, or you can't even look at until there's a river use for it. Because we're gonna protect that. That's a very important dedicated fund for the river. There's also $1 million, and now, by the way, I wanna mention, those are capital improvements. That's one separate fund. We already have a separate fund for the $1 million that was for dredging in selected places. So we had said, you know, Roma Park boat launch with public safety and all of that was a major problem. We got tree removal. There's a lot we could do in the short throw to do these types of things. So more to come on that. I'm not asking you to figure out how to spend that money right now, but I'm sure we'll have plenty of people calling us telling us how to spend that money. So thanks to Senator Joyce on that. We had $100,000 reappropriated for general infrastructure, $25,000 for the stairs at the courthouse. As you remember, we had an overrun that we had to get the stairs redone and balanced that we talked to and had that done, so we're able to cover that cost. And then the $400,000 reappropriated for the what we're doing as far as the upgrades in the jury assembly in the basement over at the courthouse as well. And so that bill we'll be spending another $250,000 because we needed to expand the jury area because of social distancing, and really we had huge space problems down there. Also with the staff of the circuit clerk, things like that. We need to get everybody kind of away from each other because we have huge space concerns at the courthouse, which, as we talked about, dotted line, there's a COVID tie to that, so we can use some of that money for that as well. We think. Department of Treasury, by the way, is not answering questions whether they agree with you. They just refer you back to the rules, which don't say much along that line. So I want to mention that. So can we have a motion to go into executive session for pending litigation 5 ILCS 120/2 C11?
Sam's got something.
Sam, did you have something, sir?
Yes, sir. Before we go into executive section, I wanted to publicly thank Senator Joyce, our former county board member representing the House. Hopkins Park has natural gas now.
It's good when it works across party lines to get something done, doesn't it?
Yes.
It really does.
Yes.
I'm glad everybody saw the need, and now get the governor to sign it.
He signed it.
Huh? Oh,
it's signed.
The governor signed it?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know. Was that today or yesterday?
Yesterday.
Oh, okay.
Last night.
Yeah, last night. Sorry, I missed that. Right. That's good. He signed it. Now we're working on getting it into the homes. That's the next step. And so we're starting to work on that next.
Yes, sir.
And there's already some things in play. The county's applied for a very substantial infrastructure grant that we're starting to work with DCEO on. So the key is natural gas in Pembroke and Hopkins Park. Just as soon as we can get it out there. I don't know if it's going to make it before the snow flies this year. That's a lot of work to do.
Maybe
we're
not.
going to keep pushing.
Maybe not.
Yep. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, I mean, there were a lot of players. I know Commissioner Payton mentioned Representative Haas and Senator Joyce. Other players as well too, right?
Oh yes.
Yeah, and withstanding the fact that you and NICOR, Reverend Jesse Jackson, and other entities who played a substantial role in that, and of course County Board Member Payton was and Mayor Hodge and all those folks. And when you think in terms of some of the obstacles that were thrown in your way, I mean, my God, I've never seen anything like that, from external pressure being brought to bear on the senator, as well as Jackie, as well as you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I think you guys deserve almost like a Nobel Peace Prize for having to be subjected to all of the vilification and harassment that you received regarding this particular project and this bill. Thank you.
And the chairman was on board from the beginning.
Yeah.
Chairman Willard.
Well, thank you for that. It's worth it because it's the right thing. There's nothing wrong with people having a choice to save money or not. and a consistent supply of energy. So the executive session pending litigation 5 ILCS 120/2C11. Is there a motion? Mr. Eckhoff, second. Mrs. Peters. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton. Mrs. Parker. Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith from Salina.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Donnell.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Ms. Bryan.
Aye.
Mr. Collins.
Aye.
Ms. Hudson.
Aye.
Mr. Smith from Bourbonnais.
Aye.
Mr. Alexander.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. So we're going to take about a 5-minute break. If anybody needs a 5-minute break, now's the time. So yes, we'll be right back. Thank you. Waiting for the light to go on. Oh, it's on. The light is on. So we'll call the county board meeting back to order. Looks like everybody is still here. I am looking for a motion to accept a settlement for case number 18 CV 2208 in the amount of $105,000. Is there a motion on the floor to accept that settlement? Who wants to make that? Ms. Bryan. Second, Mr. Carrico. Any discussion on that? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith from Salina.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Donnell.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter. Ms. Bryan.
Aye.
Mr. Collins.
Aye.
Ms. Hudson.
Aye.
Mr. Smith from Bourbonnais.
Aye.
Mr. Alexander.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Wanted to mention a couple things before we get to the other business. We lost a longtime board member, Ed Mentz, a friend of the board, a friend of ours personally, and condolences go out to his family. Served the public very well for quite a long time. Also, I wanted to discuss a little bit about these ARPA subcommittees of the executive committee. There'll be a full, I don't want to call it a presentation, but a full packet put together on this. But at executive committee this month, we're going to start to go through the structure of this, and how this is going to be separated. Everybody can't do everything, so we have to break up into smaller groups and focus on little pieces of this, along with people from the community that are either subject matter experts or want to become part of a particular subcommittee. So as Mr. Hunter mentioned earlier, way back on St. Patty's Day, we started meeting with Hispanic Partnership, the Black Pastors, the NAACP, to make sure they understood what we understood about the law at that time and what it meant. And as things have become more clear, I've kept up those conversations, but it was more of an opportunity to say, put your thinking caps on, tell us what you're wanting to do, and this is what I'm thinking. If we did have these subcommittees, what would you want to focus on? So like as an example, Mr. Pace said that he wanted to be part of workforce. So how are we going to respond to the COVID crisis, or revitalize the community, better said, in terms of workforce? And he wants to be part of that process. So there's other people I've talked to from workforce, like KCC and the Workforce Board, that maybe we can come up with something that directly impacts or addresses or mitigates something from COVID related to the workforce. It's open-ended question right now. We're not looking for answers today. That's what the committee is going to be developing, is the policy. What is our policy going to be in terms of workforce? Then once we get through that whole process of what our policy is, I've got all these requests that have started coming in, and then the committees will have ideas that they want to start coming up with on their own, what ifs. And we'll have subject matter experts in the room with Mr. McCarty and Anita and, Steve's team, because it's not as easy as we just want to give money to X, Y, and Z. Well, can we? Is that a legal use of the money? Are they an organization that can document their use of that money? Because they're sub-grantees. So there's a lot more than this than just, as I say, driving down Court Street, shoveling money out of the back of a pickup. It's not going to be that kind of a process. It's going to be very targeted with a lot of transparency. We talked about websites. We talked about communications. We talked about other municipal governments and entities working with us on bigger projects that we all agree on. So again, a marathon, not a sprint, but everybody here has a subcommittee, if you will, and those will meet on a, by the way, you gotta buy lunch, okay? No? So anyway, I just want to get to that point. More to come. I've talked to a few board members when they've asked about, what they wanted to do, but, and what committees they wanted to be on and things like that. So we've got the full list. Expect something after executive committee, and then we can go into a larger discussion. And then the board can shape this as the way that they feel as well. But I've created an overarching type platform, if you will, an initiative where we're going to respond, revitalize, and then reinvest into the community. So that's an important part of this for the board to focus on not just what you want to do, what is the community expecting, how much money do we have? I mean, people don't realize the legislature just took $5 million a year from us. $5 million a year from Kankakee County residents for services. That's what they just took from us. So it's not like we're sitting here with all this money. Well, we just lost $5 million. So we got to address that at the same time we're trying to figure out how to spend $23 million. And the two don't meet. So it's a really weird time for us, and we got a lot of work to do. So I want to make sure everybody's aware of that. Yeah, Mr. Carrico.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to clarify that for anybody watching this, that board members attending those subcommittees, they don't get paid. It's all volunteer time, right?
Well, no, those are per diem meetings, and if they so choose not to claim them, they can not submit per diem for those meetings. But yes, they are subcommittees of the board, so is it official business of the board.
Thank you.
Thank you, because there will be votes going on to move things forward into the executive committee. Mr. Lear.
Mr. Chairman, is it also correct that the funding for those per diems can come from the federal money? It would not be coming directly from local taxpayers?
That is my understanding, yes.
We have to verify that, I'm sure.
And that's the rules as they read right now would indicate that, because we can do that with salaries. We can't use it on pensions, but we can use it for the pension contribution of an employee dedicated to COVID response. Does that make sense? So, and it's the same thing with this committee. They're dedicated towards COVID response. So I think we think we can use per diems towards that.
And Mr. Chairman, that raises the second point. As chair of finance, I'm thinking the finance department is going to have a lot of different rules to sort through. I'm sure that we're conscious that at some point it's going to be appropriate to have a finance person who would be funded with some of that federal money, so that we can keep track of that.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think
We've
our
mentioned
current
it to
finance
Steve already, that we thought that it was going to take somebody that was either dedicated towards this, because really it's a grant management position, but it's over a huge amount of money over 3 years, and really the documentation is going to be until 26. So, because it has to be earmarked by 24, but it can be spent all the way through 26. So, yeah, I would agree. It's just too much to handle.
Let's stay on top of that.
Yeah, for sure. Mr. Collins, sorry.
I'd just like to address that $5 million a year that we're losing. And I think that if you pay any attention to me or speak with me privately, which I'm happy to do with all of you guys about politics, that the ICE program on a federal level, in my eyes, is completely unconstitutional and inhumane. That being said, I would never vote. It's a shame that our state level Democrats voted to shoot ourselves in the foot rather than to work on the federal level to abolish the program that they hate so much. I just wanted to point out that that's really a terrible. I would happily assist anybody to work with our state legislators to go to the federal level to abolish ICE, but I would never ever vote to just shoot ourselves in the foot. Essentially what they've done is swept it under the rug, and they're just going to push those people to a different facility in a different state. So I just wanted to kind of point out to everybody that when you're thinking about policy, and really let's try and get to the root of the problem. And it's a huge problem in Illinois here that we shoot ourselves in the foot, and we're just going to send those detainees to a different place. And honestly, a lot of them are going to be further away from, if you're arrested in Illinois where you're living illegally, quote unquote, now you're going to get shipped to a different state, and you're not going to be around the people that you were living with. So really they did a huge disservice to those people that are in our ICE system. And I've spoke with a lot of people locally that have called me to voice their concerns with ICE, and my point to them was that why not, rather than shove them down the road, why didn't we work to make sure that we treated them as well as we could while they were in our possession, or not possession but rather our custody, and work at the federal level to get rid of those things. And it's just really disheartening to me to see our state legislature do something so counterproductive.
And you know, now they're going to go to a private for-profit facility.
Absolutely.
Right, which has less transparency. You can't just show up like they've done at Jerome Combs and been accommodated for a visit to go in and see the conditions. None of those rules apply now. So now they're going to be in a facility that's more secret, with worse care. And you're right, rather than addressing, you know, the national issue of immigration reform, they decided to piecemeal it like this. And those who are being detained, whether you agree with that current policy or not, those who are being detained are going to be worse for wear now.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the part that really gets me. And if you take the financial side out of it, the impact it's going to be on those families that are already dealing with the situation, and now they're going to have to go to another state, if at all available, to see their loved ones. It's for profit. Doesn't make sense to me.
Could I also mention, just going forward with a discussion of how we're going to appropriate these funds for COVID relief, I've done a whole lot of research. A great example is Austin, Texas right now has one of the lowest unemployment rates in the country. They handled the shutdown really, really well. Their economy's on fire. They're rated the most livable place, I believe, in the country to move to right now. And one of the things that they focused on was, rather than looking at tons of little projects that people can work on with this COVID relief money, if we could maybe all think about some big projects. We have an opportunity here with a lot of money to take, rather than to give a lot of money to little issues and have it fizzle out and quite frankly be half-assed and not get anything really done. We should all look at working on a couple big issues, I think, and try and knock those out as hard as we can with the money that we have available. So just something to keep in mind as we go forward.
And that's on the committee level. Everybody will be able to have that kind of input on the committee level. Was there anything else under old, other, new business? All the above? Mr. Hess?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
There's a motion to adjourn, a second from Mr. Featherling. Yes. Don't wear it out. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say